37 years. That's how long I've been waiting for an authentic adaptation of Stephen King's dystopian sci-fi novel, The Running Man. I loved the 1987 Arnie movie. It was great and is very underrated and underappreciated. But now it's here. British director Edgar Wright has finally brought a new version to the big screen. Ever since I saw the original and read the book, I've wanted to see this. I've been anticipating this since it was announced in February 2021, and all year I've had this moment in my mind. So, I headed to view at Gunwharf Quays, and after a BK Wagyu burger I bought a coffee and settled into my seat in screen 3. The first thing I should mention is that there were not many of us. True, it was 6:20 on a Monday evening, and cold front had already swept across the country. But the plethora of empty seats was noticeable. Snow White had a pretty decent attendance. Glenn Powell stars as Ben Richards, an unemployed husband and father to a sickly child who applies to go on any of the numerous deadly game shows on the network, but is selected for The Running Man, a nationwide chase where, if he survives 30 days, he wins $1 billion. During his chase, he encounters an underground resistance movement who seem to have gone completely unnoticed in either the upper or the lower ends of society. Through them, he learns about how the government is controlled by a mega corporation called the Network, who owns the broadcaster that shows The Running Man. They are responsible for heavy pollution that gives kids lung cancer, and use manipulated game shows to distract the masses from reality. His run leads him to taking a hostage, hijacking a plane, killing the hunters who have been chasing him, and after escaping death, leads a nascent revolution against the power of the network and the show's producer, Killian. There are numerous references to media manipulation, deep fakes, contemporary conspiracies, class divides, private healthcare, corporate power, dumbed-down pop culture, film and TV production, celebrity, and mass hysteria. I recently reread and reviewed the book and realised it wasn't as good as I remembered, but I still liked it. It has many flaws, the main being that it jumps from one part of the story too quickly without letting anything settle down, and the characters don't get a chance to shine. They pop up, act like they have significant relationships with the main character, then disappear. It felt like there should have been more to the parts, as well as a B and a C plot that would have aided in the world building and made the story far more rounded and connected. And then there's the ending, which I knew would have to be changed as it's basically 9/11. I wondered how Wright would fix these issues with the original to produce a more streamlined narrative that tightens the story and improves the world building that the novel lacked. What I got was a genuinely faithful adaptation of the book. As an adaptation, it's actually very good. It's close to the novel and makes only minimal changes. That's pretty good. But that's also the problem. The novel felt like it had big chunks missing, and the new movie does too. I felt like the main side characters were dropped in at a short time to become weirdly, strongly connected to the main character, Richards, before dropping out. I didn't get a real sense of what the world was like above a superficial level. I wanted to know more about the Hunter McCone in his chase. I wanted to see Killian being a cynical puppet master, manipulating to the point of sacrificing lives to get the best ratings for the show. The original was a tight action movie that was limited in its world building by budget and technology, hence its setting in a single studio location. At a quick setup, neat progression, an interesting set of characters, and a very satisfying ending. It came at the end of what I call phase 1 of Arnie's career, when he established himself as a big draw for films of a more restrictive rating. Following near, he starred in Twins and became a mainstream movie star. It was a superb 80s action blockbuster that said a lot in a short space of time with no gumph or fat hanging off the edges. Gosport's finest, Richard Dawson, a legendary actor and game show host, was perfectly cast. And the hunters were characters in their own right, unlike the nobodies in the new version. The new movie references the originals, but the actual new hunters are nothing special. Not even their leader, who's supposed to be some sort of menacing threat. My favourite aspect of the original is the soundtrack, composed by the legend Harold Faltermeyer, the man responsible for Axel F. It's grand, operatic, stately and menacing. For me, it's a masterpiece where each tune is more than just background mood music. It fits and adds to the tone of the movie to perfection. It's like a classical symphony that would easily exist in its own right. The new soundtrack is just some generic pop culture schlock, with the end theme being a rendition of Keep On Running. Very imaginative. In fact, apart from that, I can't remember the music at all. This isn't a terrible movie by any means. Strictly speaking, it's better than Snow White or Thunderbolts. I found it more exciting and engaging, and I cared about the characters. However, I can admit there's a lot of bias in that. I do think it's more disappointing though. I had no expectations about Thunderbolts, and Snow White was nowhere near as bad as I had feared. It's not just that I love the original movie. I'm a big fan of Edgar Wright, especially his groundbreaking sitcom Spaced, which led to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. I had expected so much more from him, but this adaptation felt unimaginative and even lazy. The flaws in the novel weren't fixed or even addressed. Maybe the two rebels, Bradley and Elton, could have been combined, and the space in the runtime could have been used to give more space for a connection to develop between Richards and the hostage Amelia. Or add a couple of short scenes given a perspective from the hunters or Killian. I'm not going to pretend that I could have done better, but this reminds me of the Da Vinci Code, where Ron Howard didn't bother to fix flaws in the book, e.g. the 24-hour time frame and the nonsensical mid-air private jet detour that just couldn't happen in real life. It's perfectly reasonable to make changes when adapting books to the screen, but in this case, it felt like they were trying to avoid them as much as possible. I was disappointed. I've watched the original many times, though not for a few years. Of course, it has the benefit of personal nostalgia, but this new one has nothing in it that would make me want to go back. Weirdly, I would rather rewatch Snow White again than this. It's a missed opportunity to create something epic and insightful. It could have been a great vehicle for some interesting social commentary, but everything it tries looks forced and falls flat. It's a shame. 37 years of waiting have led to essentially nothing. I don't hate it. I felt empty at the end. Happy that it was over, but not exactly angry at the money I'd spent. It left me with one big old shrug. 30 years, done and dusted.